And we are recording. You can see it. It says recording on the bottom there.
Yeah,
On the
top left for me.
Yep. All right. So, what's going on, everybody? Thanks for tuning in. My name's Chris Theodat. I'm probably going to do a bunch of these conversations, these hot topics, once a month, if not, a couple of times a month, as many hot topics as we can get in a timely manner. I don't have a name for this yet, but as we go on, I think something will happen. Joining me tonight, I have Ali Morales. We're gonna have more people funnel through, but Ali, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Ali Morales. I know Chris from high school and
Yeah.
loved his idea of doing this discussion kind of video conference. And I'm here. I'm an open book. Can't wait to discuss the topics coming up.
Nice. Yep. Fenway class of 2000 and mind your business.
That's right.
Right. All right. So, I mean, aside from that, how are you? How are things?
I think most of us can collectively kind of go like, it's been a year. 2017's over, but technically not much has changed. So, we're
Yeah.
all still fighting. We're all still speaking out. We're all still, fighting our own fight and our own battle every day.
Yeah.
I think for people of color, immigrants, women, it's extra hard. It's difficult hearing things that are going on the news and seeing people around you cheer for it. I think that's a new thing that we've never really encountered before. So it's difficult for like a day to day. I think stress and anxiety has been at an all time high, but regardless of all that, I'm lucky to live in Boston. I'm lucky to have friends like Chris and other amazing men and women who are just on the right side of history. Because I think we're going to look back and be glad that we were fighting on the right side. So that's what's gotten me through and keeps me sane.
Awesome. Yeah, I am with you. I hope on 50 years from now, when we've all progressed, we're on the right side of what happened, what happened.
Absolutely.
So I guess just getting right into it. What the heck is sexual assault? What does it constitute? What is it? What does it constitute? Who can be assaulted? How can one be assaulted? What is it, in your opinion?
So you're just gonna go with a hard hitter right off the bat and no like easing
Right.
me into like any easy
Nope.
questions.
Nope.
Fine.
Right in there, just going.
Yeah. Well, I guess I would say sexual assault is well, let's look at just assault on its own, right? Hurting someone, any type of, physical pain. I guess the harassment would be the non-physical side of it, but then there's a
Right.
sexual aspect. And regardless of what side you stand on or what kind of, opinion you have on it, the fact is that the majority of sexual assault victims are female. And it can happen to anyone, female, male, non-binary. Anyone can be assaulted, obviously, but because of our culture, because of the things that we've taught our, boys and girls, unfortunately, women are just looked at as another product, another just good for one thing. And so because of that, you see that I don't have the actual number statistics, so I don't want to say anything that's not accurate. I think this is a time where we have to be careful about misinformation, but
Right.
we know, off the bat that the majority are women. And so I think the focus is on women, but if we fix that, then it's going to trickle down and, help men who have been assaulted, men that are harassed, because it happens, absolutely happens. It's not that we don't want to include them, but when the issues are never actually addressed and you're never heard, you get to the point where you just have to be heard, and that, like, this is it, we're talking about it, period. And I like to compare it to the Black Lives Matter versus All Lives Matter, right? If
Mhm.
something's on fire, you need to address it right now and then. And it doesn't mean that nothing else exists. It doesn't mean we're not going to get to that later. But then, people run in and they're like, no, 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 everyone needs to be fixed all at once or nobody. And that's just, it's unrealistic. Life doesn't work like that. The world doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that with race, with immigration, with, sexism, with sexual assault, with anything. So we have to start somewhere. You have to take a first step.
No, I agree. So, in your opinion, what are the first steps?
So first step, so I actually had reached out to Chris before this because I was a little hesitant only because I saw the list of people that were invited. And to be honest, I didn't like the fact that men were invited. And it's not, it has nothing, like, trust me, some of my best friends are men. Like, I'm not any male kind of person at all. It's not about that at all. It's not personal. It has nothing to do with people's characters. It just has to do with who has the mic. So step one, in order for women to be actually heard, to feel confident enough to open up and be vulnerable about something really difficult and really painful, they need to know that they're safe and they have the floor and people are going to listen. You can say whatever you want after. You don't have to agree, but they need a chance to be able to speak. And a lot of times, these discussions get interjected by men who get very defensive, and they're like, oh no, not all men, or like they go on and they're like, yeah, but this, and then you find these women getting diverted or getting sidetracked from this really important conversation, having to defend themselves or defend, why this is whatever, when they're the ones that have the firsthand experience. So step one is getting all the information. You can't make an opinion on anything in life unless you have the full facts, the full set of information. And you can't do that until you're willing to listen, non-judgmental, and just open your ears, open your mind, and listen.
I agree. Yeah, you need to get the full scope of the situation before you can really like speak on it.
100%.
So with that, okay, and I got your message about not being comfortable with men, and I get it because you want like one, you want to be heard. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Of course,
okay.
Yeah.
And like you said, sometimes men get defensive, and you want like, and it in that defense, you can't really be productive.
Exactly.
So I think productivity here and what's the word I'm looking for?
Efficiency.
Efficiency is one of the words. It's key.
Yeah. Hey, Chris, I don't want it to come off like I was uncomfortable with men. I'm not uncomfortable with men, which is, the fact that a woman is not, moderating this, that says a lot. I trust you, and I told you, the reason why, I don't have a problem when I hopped on is because I respect you enough to trust your circle. I know that you wouldn't put someone who, was reckless, whether it was male or female, on a conversation like this. So I just wanted to clarify.
No, yeah, no, I got you. No. Like, yeah, yeah. And I guess so, and I guess, and I think for me, this platform and this conversation was, asking questions and being able to ask like reckless questions, and,
oh, for sure.
And not be able to not get side eyed or interrupted or huffed and puffed on and whatnot.
Yes.
So yeah, I'm probably gonna ask a lot of like really dumb, ignorant questions, but they're questions that, since I thought of, someone else has too.
Of course, yeah. And going back to, sharing information, learning,
Right.
the root of all these disconnects, I think, is ignorance, and not in a critical way, just lack of information, lack of knowledge, whether, your friends, your circle, whatever. If you've never had that exposure, then you have to learn it somewhere, and someone's got to ask the questions, right?
Right. I agree. So again, that leads me to my next question then. How would you define consent? Like, what is consent?
Consent it's so difficult sometimes because humans are not just words, right? The difference between a book and a human is body language, that chemistry, the gut feeling. So a lot of times when like, if someone responds like, yeah, okay, like maybe, and they're just like, oh, yep, check the box, they said yes, and boom, like just take off. That's not consent. Consent is being 100% sure, there's no doubt in your mind that the other person is on the same page as you, is just with you. You're on the same page, that's it. If it shouldn't take more than once for a human, doesn't matter if it's a woman or a man, a human to tell you, slow down, stop, you're going too fast, you're doing something I don't like, whatever. And I think that's one of the first issues that snowballs into these really, horrible monsters like Harvey Weinstein, because there's a lot of different levels and kinds of issues within this topic, is having that mentality of whatever this person says doesn't matter. I'm number one. I'm first. What I want right now trumps whatever this person is feeling, and they're going to suffer from my gratification. And that's the first question I think we need to ask ourselves is, why are these teenage boys, let's start, early, look at Brock Turner. Why are these teenage boys, like who taught these children from the get-go? But you look around and I don't ask myself like, why do they do this? I ask myself, why wouldn't they? You look at the way that people are raised, and it's like, it's so wrong from the beginning. It's so many times. And I think this is just my experience, but I honestly think that most women have to teach themselves a lot of things as they grow. And that's like, a lot of those hurdles and those huge breakthroughs that you have to make as a woman that, a lot of people don't, no one talks about it. No one knows about it, where you have to find out on your own because you're taught the opposite, right?
So what causes that then? Like why, and I know so from a cultural standpoint, right? I understand I'm like, I'm a Haitian American, first generation American. I understand like there are a lot of unsaid, unspoken rules that you just have to know. What causes these things?
I'm telling you, it's sexism. And sexism isn't just like one thing. It's a spectrum of things. It can be, as just like racism. Racism can be like something that's just in your subconscious and not malicious at all. It's just, what you learned, and it can go to the other spectrum of like a Nazi. So same in sexism. I think that people, are just kind of trained to like immediately be like, oh, girl pink, oh, boy blue, and like silly things like that you don't realize sometimes limits kids' potentials or makes them feel, criticized or whatever. And then it, can escalate to a point where we know how bad it can be. But I think the root of it, honestly, is, and it transcends gender too, but I think raising a child with any expectation of what you want them to be without allowing them to be who they are, I don't think that's ever good. And when it comes to girls and boys, girls are always at a disadvantage, always, from the clothes, from the type of books, toys, household chores, skills, basic skills, and I know, like you mentioned, I think culturally it can vary, but I think it varies in, I guess, levels. None of them are non-existent, I guess. It's existent in every culture.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm like, well, I get my thing is what makes people like aside from the sexism and all the isms, what makes people afraid to speak to their kids about these things?
I don't know. I have a hard time with that stuff because I come from a family that like overshares and like talks much about everything. And so I'm like, I have no problem. There's nothing I don't talk about. So sometimes it blows my mind that people can, go through lives without ever discussing certain things. And I wish they would, because that's the type of parenting that, actually makes a difference in what kind of human you're releasing into the world.
So I guess that leads with the whole consent thing. That leads to I'm reading this Aziz Ansari situation.
Yeah.
So what do you know about that?
So I think I read her account of exactly what happened. And right off the bat, when I heard like Aziz Ansari, I was like, oh no, another Harvey Weinstein, like what? I love this guy. What the hell is going on? And so I went to go read the whole thing, and I read the whole thing, and I was like, oh, okay. I'm still 100% on her side. I think that there's absolutely no reason in this world that women need to deal with this, period. Regardless of how badly it affected them, it's just BS. Like, it's just something that we deal with that we just don't need to. We're all humans. If women respect, men's decisions on what they want to do, then vice versa. It should go both ways. There's no, I'm one to really 100% believe in equality, 1000% feminist in the actual sense of what that word actually is. But sorry, to go back to Aziz, I'm sorry. So yeah, so initially I was like, oh, okay. But then I started reading comments, and I was like, what? It doesn't mean that this is like okay because it's not as bad as the other stuff. This is a different type of issue under the same topic. that we need to address.
Right.
So this goes from everywhere from like, think of just a club, not even in like a sexual situation yet. Just, I love dancing. I love dancing. I don't go to the club anymore. I can't deal with it. You know, personally, I've been grabbed in the front and back by strangers in a club. Like, so you get to the point where you're like, the whole night's ruined. Like, you can't get that disgust off of you and you're like, why? Like, I would never do this to someone. Why would someone like think that that's okay, right? And so that type of stuff just turns you off. I avoid going to clubs now. It's just not like, it's not fun. You like walk into a lion's den and you have to like protect yourself and be on guard all night. That's not fun to me anymore.
Right. I mean, yeah, I get that part. I think, so I guess my question is about the whole Aziz Ansari thing is like, okay, so, all right. And again, not to sound like insensitive, but to ask like the crazy questions. Like, is it, like, was it a bad night or was it really like some like pervy, weirdo stuff? Because, so you read it and she says, you know, like she gave plenty of, what was it?
I know the word.
Verbal cues.
Yeah. Like huge. Or hand.
Right. So like, in the heat of the moment, like we're all adults, you know, we've you know, handled business. In the heat of the moment, like those nonverbal cues, if you're, especially him giving her, I think it was oral sex, you're in the moment. Those things are what nonverbal cue can you be giving that doesn't trigger the opposite response if you're going down on somebody?
One more time. What verbal?
So what are those nonverbal cues? Like, so she said she gave nonverbal cues. I think the article says that he gave her oral sex, and you know I mean, they didn't actually like have sex. He said some pretty like wild stuff, like he said some pretty wild and weird stuff. Like where do you want me to F you and all this stuff? Like
10 times.
Wild, like a bunch of times.
Yeah.
But then like after that, how does it go from that to him going down on her, and what are those nonverbal cues like?
Yeah, no.
What should men be aware of in those situations?
So it's tough because every situation is different. Mm-hmm. Every connection is different. Some people have more chemistry than others. So there's no like list or like, you know, vocabulary lists or like, you know, things to keep in mind where you're like, oh, she did it. Like, you have to be in the moment. You have to be human. Like we're all adults, like you said. And if you can be an adult to do, you know, adult things, but you can't be an adult to do everything it takes to get there, then you're not ready to do those things. Like, control yourself. If you're so in the moment that you're sticking your fingers down someone's throat 10 times as she's like hopping away from you in the apartment, like take a cue, right? Most of it was physical cues that she said, but she did say like twice, like, hey, slow down. And you have to like, I don't know, I try to put myself in the other person's shoes every time I, you know, think of a situation like this. So they go back to this apartment. And so I think that's where the problem starts, is that men a lot of times take things that are perfectly normal for two humans, especially that, you know, two people that are just dating and getting to know each other, as like the green light, as like, oh, she wants it, or like it's on, you know. So going back to this apartment, no, that doesn't mean that you're going to sleep together. Maybe you do, and it's awesome, great, you're both on the same page, but it doesn't mean automatically. And so she said, like, the minute they went in, she complimented his marble countertops, and his response was like, yeah, why don't you hop up and like sit on them? And she was kind of like, whoa. So it's like, all right, right off the bat, too fast. It doesn't mean that she maybe wouldn't be into it. She seemed like she liked him up to there. But then more men resort back to like that infantile mind, that 18-year-old like teenage horniness where they can't even think. And it's because we don't force men, boys at that age to do better. So they never learn to do better. Most of them, I'm not speaking for all men, obviously, but I'll bet you anything, every single woman has encountered something like this. I have with a friend. It wasn't even someone I was dating, and all of a sudden I was like, whoa, what's going on? And so I know what it feels like to be in that moment, in that position. It's difficult because you can't expect women to go from black to white, everything was going great. They were getting along. There was even some chemistry. Like
Right.
in your mind, you're like, all right, like I want this to go well. Maybe I'll give them some hints. You're trying to redirect it back on track. And it's not until, the 10th, 15th, 20th time that you're like, okay, like I gotta pump the brakes on this. And there's always, I bet you anything, there's always that little thing in your mind that most men can outmuscle you. And you never know how men react to getting rejected. And there are enough stories out there that put it in your head, like, is he going to flip out? Is he going to hurt me? Could it escalate? And so, yeah, all of that is like taken into consideration when you're going through it.
All right. No, you have good points. So I guess my other question is, so going back to someone's apartment. So in your head, you're saying, okay, this is something two normal people do. They just, it doesn't always lead to anything. But wouldn't it be safe to assume that going back to someone's apartment means that the possibility is there for that to happen? Like that's the intention, right?
Possibility. Yeah. We're all adults, right?
Right. So it's like, I'm on a date. I bring you back to my house. Isn't that like in my head, that's the intention, right? But in your head, you're like, well, I don't know.
No, I'm not saying I don't know. I think, as adults, if it's like, late, let's say midnight, and you're like, let's go back to my house and have a drink, then absolutely something's gonna, your intention is probably to have a romantic time, whether it's, have a glass of wine and make out because it's the first time you ever go back to the apartment and you're kind of like, I don't want to do too much. Like, what if they are a horrible kisser? Like, honestly, it could be that simple. And what if they're like tongues on your throat and you're like, gross. Like, I don't even want to go there now. What if you cop a feel and you're like, not worth it. And you don't want to go there. There's so many situations that would make you change your mind. And it doesn't mean that you can't change your mind, that you can't turn back. It doesn't mean the door's locked behind you. That's not fair. That turns something that could be so fun and like awesome into a really dangerous and traumatic situation. Guys don't instinctually think of this because you guys are used to being like big and tall and like not many people can outmuscle you other than other bigger guys.
Right.
But when you grow up knowing like, all right, I can't go head to head with someone if they attack me. I have to be ready with like mace or a knife or like my keys or whatever. And you're in a situation where you're alone with someone, that always goes through your head, I think.
Got it. Yeah. All right. So we went through what are nonverbal cues. So I guess for you personally, or what are things you would do to set boundaries and limits, that what, I'm not trying to do this, or you're cool, but I don't want to, like, that's not how I want to do this.
I mean, I'm 30 now, so I feel very like comfortable in being able to speak up for myself. But I wasn't always like this, and I'm not talking like middle school. I'm talking like even after high school. Like I was still going through a phase where I would get very nervous to like make guys feel bad. You get raised to like don't say no, don't disappoint them, don't like whatever, don't reject them. Like you have to protect their egos, and so you grow up and it takes a long time to be like, no, you can say no in this situation. And then a lot of times it takes a bad situation to look back and be like, damn it, why didn't you say anything? And that just like eats at you. And then when you finally start speaking up and you start realizing that, you can control what happens a little bit, it feels liberating. It feels good. But at the same time, that threat that I was talking about, I think it goes up a little. I've had situations where it was just a bad day and I ended up yelling at someone. And then I was like, uh-oh, they're following me. I'm like, this is scary. And so, it's scary. It's scary sometimes. But I guess it doesn't have to be all or nothing. It doesn't have to be one extreme to the other. I think for example, the woman that spoke up against Aziz, she made a comment like, hey, like, why don't we slow down? I think there are certain words that are very hard to like dispute afterwards that are important to say. And everyone can figure out how to get it in their own way. You don't have to say like, stop, you can be like, hey, can you hold on a second? I feel a little overwhelmed. I just need to like take a breather. However you want to communicate it. But I urge women, like, the minute you feel anything like too fast, too much, too anything, don't let it snowball. Don't let it become bigger or more difficult to wrangle. Just stop. Like, everything should be exactly as you want it and as you're comfortable with. It should be by your guidelines too. It should be by both of your guidelines, but usually it's only by one guideline, and we just have to kind of like keep up. And that's got to change.
Um. All right. So this is I guess, for me, kind of a crazy question because, like, I don't like you don't want to offend people, but then you want to like get an answer. Where do you draw the line between, victim blaming and taking responsibility?
What do you mean victim blaming and taking responsibility? Exactly.
So okay, so you know, um, not in a you shouldn't have worn that. I think that's a little bit weird, and like it doesn't matter what you wear. But
Hmm.
I think that there's a you know, in my I guess like again, uh, going to some brand new person's apartment like can be a little sketchy, and you you might be feeling it, but like in both of your adult brains, you don't know each other.
Very sure.
You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And I think it opens it up to uh, just snowballing, like you said, happening when I think for me, like I'm a little bit old school and traditional. You first date, like again, you're adult, you can do whatever you want, but like first date, you're gonna take it easy. You're gonna go home.
Hmm.
That's it. Like you're gonna go home. You're gonna chill out. You're gonna, you're gonna. It's a sequence of dates of you getting to know the person
Yeah.
before you say, I'm gonna go back to their apartment.
No,
Now,
everyone's got their own process for sure. I respect that.
right.
Yeah.
So, and I guess so. And again, I don't want to victim blame and say, well, if she didn't do X, Y, and Z, then she wouldn't have been in this particular situation. That's a really like harsh thing to say.
Yeah.
Um, but like, yeah, like, is there some like, is there a balance of responsibility slash like, uh, you had no control over this, but or you had some control over this, and this still happened.
I see what you mean. I think that we've already done that to like a lot of different topics, regarding this.
Mm-hmm.
And so at this point, I would say no. I think that we do enough. There's not a day that goes by that we are not doing things subconsciously and consciously to stay safe, to, as just a woman, like whether you're going to bathrooms together at a club or you're doing whatever, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
There's so much that we already do. Look at these products that are out there. Like, underwear that you can't rip off, or like that sends an alert to someone when you're like getting attacked. Like,
Right.
the nail polish that tells you if your drink has a roofie. Why is everything on us? It's as if we're dealing with like this wild animal that is like, you can't wrangle it, you can't domesticate it, you can't do anything to it. And we just have to learn how to live in this world where we can't make a mistake. We can't have a night where we're like, ooh, this might go good, because the alternative is something really horrible. And so how is that fair, right? It
Right.
could easily be an awkward night. It could easily be like you said, a bad night. But I think that some lines were crossed there that we know can be easily categorized under this topic. Um, Lines were crossed that would easily be eliminated if men worked on themselves, because I still like have yet to hear any real improvements that men are doing. There's no movement within men to be like, what the hell is our community doing? Like, what's wrong with them? Look at these rates. Like, it's just so accepted and like normal that like this is just a life we're given and we have to deal with it. And I'm personally sick of it. So I refuse to put any blame on women. I think that as adults are dating, she shouldn't have to fear being in a situation where, this guy is like absolutely not listening to her and violating her and making her feel like, I regret this, or whatever else she felt.
Right.
Um, that's on him. That's not on her. There are certain things that absolutely, that just as a person, the risk like avoid it, you know, try and take care of yourself and your body and whatever. But in a situation like this, like, come on, if we can't even like go back to someone's house to have a drink without being put in that position, then no, that's work men have to do, I think.
Got it. Yeah. All right. I got it. Uh, I agree. I think I agree because yeah, I think the responsibility, you know, a lot of the brunt does fall on women when where men should just be like, "Yo, she says stop, chill out."
Yeah. And now as an adult, because I think as at 30, I think both genders have really like grown into their own who they
Right.
are. And I'm lucky to have an amazing boyfriend and amazing male friends, amazing male colleagues.
Right.
Um, and so I know that they're capable of it because they're great humans. And so I look around, I'm like, why is everyone else not like you? What the hell? Like you look at me and you see me. You don't look at me and think like, oh, like just a woman or like, ooh, like just a woman. You know what I mean?
Right.
There's that like lack of just on a human level, honestly, just an awareness on a human level.
Um. So I guess that also leads me to what was I going to ask? Uh, I guess mixing signals, kind of like you know what happens when the no means yes, the yes means like the like what those situations because
Yes means no and no means yes.
so it's kind of like no giggle 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 haha laugh 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 no but then
Yeah.
like you know it was I was nervous and I was laughing but I said no and is that no giggle giggle kind of worth your livelihood in your career?
Oh, yeah. I mean, if it starts off as like a no giggle giggle and it is a joke and the other person knows it's a joke, then it's just that flirty game of like, no, come chase me, like whatever, like that, you know, that's social, it happens. But if it's like, and like I said, it's different in every single situation. If it's someone that you're just starting to see first time or first few times, and they're kind of saying like, giggle, no, 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 then slow down, just slow down. It doesn't hurt to slow down. You don't have to
Right.
stop and run. You don't have to like keep going. Just take it easy. Maybe ask, be like, you know, just, I don't know, just have a conversation or like, slow it down and wait for them to like make the next move or give you a cue or say they want more. Just give it a chance. Most people don't give it a chance. That's a problem.
Right. But then like so again these things can you can like you can kill the mood as people say you know and what if you don't want to risk killing the mood so no she said it but she was giggling so I thought it was good to go.
Yeah. Um,
So
yeah, but I guess like I haven't really heard of any situations like that that resulted in like, you know, someone losing their livelihood or getting like prison time.
right.
But I'm aware that there like, you know, are some situations where afterwards it's like, so I think it like again, it depends on the situation. If you have a conversation after and you're like, yeah, I know I said yes, but I really wasn't comfortable, then there's no need to argue. Be like, oh, well, okay, next time
Right.
I'll make sure I, you know, actually take you, even if you're giggling, take you for your word, and then move on. If it's something that's like it bothered them that much, then hey, there are other things that happen that are not sexual that can really be awkward and bother people that much where they don't want to. Just call it a loss, move on. Like it's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
You know? It's just like that lack of taking accountability, even if for like little things. I feel like women are more often faster to apologize and be like, oh yeah, my bad, I messed up. And sometimes it takes, you know, a lot of pressure to get that out of a lot of men. Not all, a lot of men.
Right. um so now getting into accusations and all that good stuff.
Yeah,
um So we realize, right, that the accusation itself leaves a stigma on you, whether you've done something or not.
yeah.
Is there getting past these accusations?
If you're innocent,
Yes.
there should be. And so there should be. I don't know where it comes from, I guess. I know that there was that football player that
Yep.
I just realized today was in prison for 5 years. I thought the accusation had just happened, but yeah, the woman that accused him said that she was lying, but that was after he did 5 years and, you know, lost a bunch of stuff. So it's like, I think it should be treated like every other crime when there's a false accusation, you know, that person should, you know, get whatever penalty they deserve, and the victim should get recompensated for whatever type of like losses and hardships and whatever they went through. However,
Mhm.
and this is the difference between genders. And so wait, let me put it out there. This woman,
Mhm.
she's our enemy, both of us. So it's awful. It's horrible to accuse someone of doing something that horrific. It's
Right.
disgusting. But she doesn't realize that she's hurting her sisters, other women, horribly by like immediately giving people validation that don't believe victims, which is the root cause of why so many victims don't come out and speak up and
That's a
ever get any
fact.
justice or like any right. And so
Right.
it's awful. She's hurting everybody. It's an awful thing to do. It's horrible. I would never defend someone like that. But it is really, really frustrating when she gets 6 years, 6 years, right? She got for
I
the
think
false
so.
accusation.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
6 years, and Brock Turner gets 3 months. And I'm not saying she should get less, but he should, and it's got to be equal. What kind of message are you sending out when someone that does something that horrific, like Brock Turner, there's witnesses, like what else do you need? There's evidence, and he gets a slap on the wrist.
But that plays more to like privilege, right? Because you can like the kid was well off. His father wasn't his father a judge?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I
So
think it's a mixture of both, absolutely. But even when there is no like actual like wealth like privilege,
mhm.
if you look at other cases, it's never the same. The same way, people of color and white people don't get the same time for the same kind of convictions. It differentiates a lot within sex crimes on what
Right.
women get and what men get.
Um
And sorry, and I think a lot of it is because so much importance is placed on what men contribute. So think of the Brock Turner case.
right.
What did they immediately talk about? His swimming success. He's a student. Oh my God, if he goes to prison right now, it's going to ruin his. She's disposable. No one cares about what she does. No one cares about her family or her school or her work or her, mind.
But isn't so like a lot of that too? I think a lot of that goes back to privilege because a lot of that is if you can afford to sway the media, like if you're well off, you're a judge, you can hold press conferences, you can change the narrative a little bit, right?
For sure. No,
So
100.
because you got so in the same sense like a guy like Brian Banks, who's the falsely accused football player, he
Mhm.
didn't have the same type of sway with the media. Is he did it, and uh, and again, he loses 5 years of his life, which is prime time for getting into professional sports.
Yep.
He can't get that back. But it's crazy how Brock Turner can get his life back.
Not only that, but he wants to reopen the case because he thinks that he shouldn't be on the registry because
He
technically she's
shouldn't be on the
buying a
registry.
dumpster instead of a garbage can. Or oh man, don't get me started on that.
So yeah, that's a whole other situation.
Because life is
Um,
complicated. We don't live in a world that only deals with racism or only deals with sexism. It is a big mixture, and some people are unfortunately stuck smack in the middle of it. And
right.
it's complicated. Humans are complicated.
Um, I'm trying to find how much time this woman did get.
I said 6, but I have no idea. It's just what came to mind. I was like, I think I meant,
Apparently, she has to pay $2.6 million.
yikes, that's a
Yeah,
lot.
it's a lot of money. I mean, it's still not his career, but
Yeah.
but yeah. Um, I guess my final question is, um, so where do we go from here? Like, what are the next steps? Yeah, where do we go from here?
I think across the board, we need to start speaking out against injustices just in general. Um, if you Imagine if you were walking down the street and someone catcalled you and the person next to him was like, hey, like, what the hell are you doing? Cut that out. Like, how over time, how quickly we could start reducing this type of behavior, and in turn start changing the way that, you know, women are viewed in these type of men's eyes. And the minute that starts to change, the behavior changes. And so it's almost like we just have to humanize ourselves. It's unfortunate, but it's like convincing people like I'm a human, and, you know, I feel and I deserve all the same things that you do. And so it's speaking out, you know, not being silent, not letting things happen in public. And then I don't know where to even start when it comes to things that escalate to the point of, you know, going to court. And
Yeah.
it starts with like your family, like, you know, saying this happened to me, and some families don't even believe them. And then you go to the police and they might not believe you, or they might think like, yeah, well, what do you expect? Like, you were looking like this, or so it's like every single step of the way, it's a traumatic fight. If people started to get on board and actually listen and actually help women, it will make it easier for women to speak out. Look at the social movement. Look at this whole Me Too. I bet you a ton of women who normally wouldn't speak out didn't feel completely alone, saw the response and started speaking out as well. And it only does good, you know?
Yeah. I think that's it. And anything, you know, final you want to get out there, say? Any vicious rumors you want to spread?
What?
Any vicious rumors you want to spread?
Well, there was this one time in high school that Chris was, no, I'm kidding.
We know.
Yeah, no, we touched on so many things. I think it really talks about, like, focuses on like the more low level things that we actually have like control over, that we can change and be active about. So yeah, and if anyone ever comes out to you and, you know, tells you that they've been hurt or violated or anything, regardless of what you think, you weren't there, you weren't in their shoes, you don't know if they're telling you the whole story. Just support them. Don't reject them. Don't say they're lying. Don't criticize. Don't blame them. Just listen and just be there for them. That's all I can say, for at least for people in our circle that could do something good.
Well, there it is. Ali, thank you very much. I appreciate your insight.
Thank you, Chris.
Um,
Thank you for putting this together.
Oh, this is cool. Definitely gonna have to do it again with a wider scope of opinions. I think we pretty much line up. Like, I want to hear someone argue it. Like, no, you shouldn't wear that mini skirt.
I'll bring my boxing time. I'm kidding. Yeah, no, I'd be interested to hear other people's perspectives, because I know that, like, I can be very outspoken, but I'm very interested in, you know, other perspectives that don't align with mine sometimes. I'm interested.
But yeah, I'm definitely gonna do this again. And I'd love to have you on. I don't know what the next topic will be, but, you know, I'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
Nice.
And that's that. Thank you for coming on.
Cool. No, thank you for having me. Thanks so much for putting this together.